Nachappa from Jain University. So today I will be looking at how we can say plan how to write the computer science paper as such. So the entire idea is to understand the concepts that are required to be studied and also to understand how the marks are distributed in the paper as such. So as you know that the code for computer science is 41. So we will be having this as such. And the computer science paper is basically divided into 4 units. Okay. Or the computer science syllabus is basically divided into 4 units. So the first unit covers the backdrop of computers. I will take each unit and explain what is required, what will be the marks that will be covered, and how you can prepare for that as such. So roughly we'll first try to understand what are the units that are there and what we have to concentrate on as such. So the first unit, as you can see, is backdrop of computers. So here it is required for us to have certain knowledge in terms of the configuration of a computer. Remember, all of you are working on a computer and somebody asks you, what is the configuration of your computer? So you should be able to explain thoroughly, what is the configuration and why you have chosen that as such, along with certain other concepts that are there. So then you will have certain knowledge related to digital electronics as such. And along with that, you will be also having, say, certain introduction to programming in terms of data structures. The second unit that we have is programming concepts. And in this case, so we are learning one programming language called C++. So part of this programming language you have learned in the first year. The other part of it, so the major part of it is what will be covered here. So the third unit that we have is related to database management system. So questions related to that. What is data? So what is database management system? So and what are the different ways in which we can organize data? All this will be studied in the third unit. And the remaining will contain, the last unit will contain certain additional concepts related to communication. Communication in the sense today, as you know, that internet is a huge requirement. So we are also able to communicate with each other because of the availability of this resource. And what all we have to understand in terms of these resources smallly, explained in this session. So we'll take each unit at a time. First, try to understand the backdrop of what we have to learn, what we have to understand as such, and then, so we will go through the remaining part. So the first unit, as you can see, covers 4 chapters. So chapter 1 will be typical configuration of a computer. Chapter 2 will be Boolean algebra. Chapter 3 will be logic gates. Chapter 4 will be data structures. So these are 4 important chapters. And if you look on the right hand side, so you can see that it covers about 15, 21, 40 marks from your question paper. 40 marks. Your paper is for 70 marks. And you can see here, 40 marks comes from here itself as such. So that means, so now what you have to understand is very simple. If you go through your entire syllabus, you'll probably have a lot of chapters, 15, 16 chapters are there. But now what you have to first do is you have to study smartly. So you have to study smartly, and then you can study, say, with rigor as such. So it becomes important you have to study smartly as such. Now, why that is required, I will tell you slowly as such. Now, your question paper will be basically divided into 4 parts as such. Part A, Part B, Part C, Part D, or you will what we will call it as Section A, Section B, Section C, and Section D. So Section A will be 1 mark questions. Section B will be 2 mark questions. Section C will be 3 mark questions, and Section D will be 5 mark questions. 1 mark, you have to answer a total of 10 questions. 2 marks, you'll have to answer a total of 5 questions. 3 marks, you'll have to answer a total of 5 questions. And 5 marks, you'll have to answer a total of 7 questions. And here you can see that 10 marks, I said a total of 10 questions. So you can see that 5 of those 10 questions can come from this unit as such. Unit A, as we call as backdrop of computers as such. So if you are studying this unit thoroughly, so you'll probably covering approximately, you can see that around 50% of your paper itself as such. Okay. So this will be very important as such. Okay. So we will look at each unit and try to understand what is there in this particular unit as such. To start off, the first chapter that we have, first chapter we have is called as typical configuration of a computer. Naturally, it is very important for you to know your computer. If you're sitting in front of your computer, you have to have knowledge related to this. And for that, the functioning unit, the functional unit of a computer is represented by the block diagram. Okay, so you have the input unit, you have the output unit, you have the processing unit, you have the storage unit. So all those you have to study here as such. So this basically tells you how the working of a computer happens. And of course, once you go deep into your computer, if you by chance open up your computer and look into that, you'll probably observe that the important unit of that is the motherboard. Okay. Again, you'll have to have knowledge related to what is a motherboard, what it contains, what are the types of motherboards that are there, what do you mean by a processor, what do you mean by the speed of a processor, the clock speed of a processor, so what do you mean by BIOS, so what we call as the basic input output system, and to run your computer, or to maintain your motherboard, there is a small battery that is required, what we call as the complementary metal oxide semiconductor, or what we call as the CMOS battery. So then you have your RAM as such. What are the different types of RAMs that you can have? What are the different types of slots you can have? So all of you might have seen in your computer, you have the USB port as such. So like this case, previously we used to have the serial port, the parallel port, and so on as such. So the different types of ports that are there, the different types of interfaces that are there. Then we have what we call as the bus. So the bus basically represents a collection of wires. So if you know that, for example, you have a switch and you have a bulb. If the bulb has to glow, there has to be a connection from the switch to the bulb, and this happens with the help of wires. So similarly, internally in a computer, every component of a computer is connected with the help of a collection of wires, what we call as the bus as such. And of course, the computer contains components which works with what we call as direct current as such, whereas the power supply that we have for our houses are alternate currents, AC and DC. And somebody has to convert your AC current into your DC current so that it can power each and individual component of your computer, and that is done with the help of what we call as the SMPS, the switch mode power supply. And then we have the UPS, which is an additional power device, which will help you when power in your area goes off as such, to make sure that you work in an uninterrupted manner. And finally, somebody asks you, I want to buy a computer, you should be able to give the configuration of a computer. This is what you will be studying in the first chapter as such. So it's very easy, you can go through this easily as such. The second chapter is basically an extension of what you had studied in the first year. So first year, you probably had a little of logic gates as such. So the extension of logic gates and the implementation of that in terms of Boolean algebra and Boolean logic will be done in this year as such. So you'll have to have knowledge of the Boolean algebra laws, which are there, different laws of Boolean algebra. You'll also have previously, like you studied, you'll have knowledge in terms of the logic gates, the AND gate, OR gate, NOT gate, and the derived gates, like NOR gate, NAND gate, and what we also call as universal gates and so on. So you will also be studying certain laws, what we call as the De Morgan laws, and some postulates of Boolean algebra, some rules of Boolean algebra will also be there. Now, the concept of Boolean algebra is basically like this. For example, the Boolean algebra concept basically helps us to implement different operations which are possible. if you are adding two numbers, multiplying two numbers, this is implemented internally by logic gates. Okay. Now, logic gates is a collection of circuits that we have. And it is always possible that if two people are designing circuits, okay, they might have a different set of connections that are there. Which one is the best connection? Okay, is it possible for us to have a minimum connection? So all this will be taught, okay, in the minimization which is possible with respect with using what we call as Karnaugh map. So just understand this. Okay, imagine you are connecting your house, okay, with say switches and wires, and you want to find out what is the minimum that you can use to connect your switches and wires in your house. So the logic of Karnaugh map will help you to minimize and come out with an optimum connection. So this is what we will be learning today. And of course, we have a slightly higher and complicated structure, what we call as data structures. So data structures are again basically
Sorry for the technical glitch. Sir will come back. Sir will come back. I think so. There is a network problem. Yeah. Yeah, sir. You can carry on.
I think there was a break in connection, sir.
Yeah. Yes, sir. Yes.
Yeah. Can you see the slide now again? Am I audible? Students are not answering. I'm not able to understand whether I'm audible or not.
Sir, you are audible, sir. You are audible, sir.
The screen is visible, no, sir?
Screen is also visible, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Okay. The next chapter that I was discussing about is data structures. So data structure again constitutes a very important chapter in your syllabus. Okay, and it basically lays the foundation for you to understand the concept of programming. Okay, programs basically, as you know, represent solutions to problems. So you have a problem, okay, and how you have to solve that as such. Now, during the process of solving the problems, we will have to store data. Okay, so data are values that are required for solving your problems. Now, how to store that data? In what order can I store the data? Is represented in terms of different structures, what we call as data structures. So in this regard, so we will be learning what data we are storing, how we are storing, how we will be performing different operations, and what are the possible data structures which are available. So different possible data structures, okay, some of them we have listed here. You can see we have arrays which are there. So there is another data structure called as stacks. There is another data structure called as queues. So each one you will be understanding and learning, okay, how it is represented in the computer, okay, and how it can be used and for what it can be used. For example, in terms of arrays, so we use arrays for various operations like traversing, insertion, deletion, searching, and sorting. So some important operations, some basic searching and sorting algorithms are also taught for you. Binary search and linear search is taught, and bubble sort and selection sort will be taught for sorting as such. Similarly, in the next structure that we have is what we call as stacks and queues. Again, we will learn how it is represented, how it is used, and so on. And some of the places where you can use is for creating what we call as Polish notation, which is basically a representation of an expression. And then when we have different expressions, how to convert from one type to another type. If I have a prefix expression, how to convert it into infix, or if I have a postfix expression, how to convert it into say prefix or infix as such. So this is what you will be learning there. And of course, we have a slightly higher and complicated structure, what we call as linked list. So here you'll only have to learn what is a linked list, what are the types of linked list, and what are the operations that are possible as such. Okay. So this is what will constitute your say this thing as such, okay, the previous chapter. So I will just again go through the marking that is available. So here you can see that. So if you look at a typical configuration of a computer, what is going to be asked? So one mark question will be asked, okay, one 2-mark question will be asked, and one 3-mark question will be asked. So which means that there is no 5-mark question that will be asked from this particular chapter. So you will have to be ready with, okay, all the possible 1-mark questions, which will be direct questions. Okay, so what is a computer? What is a processor? Okay, so what do you mean by bus? Okay, so like this, direct questions will be asked. A direct question with a slight explanation will be a 2-mark question. Okay, and okay, I will be looking at some samples also. We'll take up a model paper later, and okay, I will explain it to you. Similarly, a direct question, okay, with a little more explanation is what we will, okay, be calling as, okay, 3-mark questions as such. Okay, so here, okay, you can see it is called as very short answers. Direct 1-line answers that you have, short answers, 2 or 3 sentence answers, okay, for 2 marks, and long answers, so probably about 4 or 5 sentence answers as such. But if you are writing about, okay, a page of answer, we call it as essay type answers, which is for 5 marks. So you don't have to concentrate on long, okay, essay type answers in the first chapter. You'll have to only concentrate in terms of, okay, 1 mark, 2 mark, and 3-mark questions. Similarly, coming to Boolean algebra, you will be probably having a lot of simple questions that will be asked for 1 mark and 2 marks, but there will be a question related to Karnaugh map. Okay, simplification or minimization. So that will be a 5-mark question that you will have to study. So Karnaugh map case, whether it is POS or SOP, so you will have to prepare. So it is always better that you practice a lot of questions related to Karnaugh map. That will help you in terms of the 5-mark question. That is the only type of 5-mark question that will be asked here as such. Okay, logic gates again, simple. You can see that. So all the gates that you have, AND gate, OR gate, NOT gate, so all those you will be studying here. And it is only again 1 mark, 2 mark, and 3-mark questions. You don't have to look for long answers as such. Okay, so even in Boolean algebra, so you have postulates of Boolean algebra. So you can that also will be limited to 1 or 2 postulates. So which might come in terms of 2-mark questions and not in terms of longer questions as such. So longer question will be mostly limited only to the Karnaugh map as such. Okay. But when it comes to data structure, again, you might have a direct question of, okay, what is data structure, what is stack, what is queue, and so on. Okay. And similarly, you might have some small algorithms that will be asked. No programs will be asked. Understand the rule that we have with respect to your this thing. All programs are limited only to the practical examination, which might have already happened for you. Okay. So no programs will be asked in terms of your theory paper. So do not try to mug up your programs or study your programs or practice your programs as such. So it will be limited only to the algorithms that will be asked. Okay, you might be asked an algorithm related to push, pop, and so on like that. Okay, or queue, adding an element to a queue or deleting an element from a queue. So which will be a 3-mark question as such. Okay, so coming to so slightly bigger questions, essay type questions, 2 questions will be asked. Okay, so one will probably limited to searching and sorting. Another might be limited to the say algorithms related to applications of stack, whether it is infix or postfix or prefix. Okay, so those questions. Okay, again it will be mostly related to the applications as such. So you will have to again learn the algorithms which are there as such. Okay, so this is what will be asked. So this is what is related to the first unit that you are going to study. Okay, before going to the second unit, if you have some questions to ask here, you can ask here. Anything you want to ask related to the first unit, that is. No questions. You have to be interactive. Okay, either I am not audible to you or not. Okay, this thing. So you're anything. No questions. There is questions. Nothing is there. Very quiet audience we have. Okay, so I'll keep the questions to the last assess. So let us again go through the next unit that we have. The next unit is completely related to programming. The first part of this programming is naturally what you have learned in the first year. Okay, as you know that we have different programming languages. Okay, so we have procedural languages, we have object-oriented programming languages, we have event-driven programming languages, and so on. Okay, so you might have heard somebody saying that I have studied C programming language. Okay, so C programming language is what we call as a procedural driven language. Okay, so there the word itself says procedure. You write programs in terms of just a sequence of sentences or instructions which will solve a given problem. Now, an improvement over procedural language is to divide the program into different parts using the concept of what we call as objects. Okay, an object will contain a collection of two things. It will contain data, it will contain certain functions. So a collection of objects is what we call as object driven programming language. Now the first part, in first year you have learned without objects as such. So all your programs were limited to more like procedural language. So you learned the concepts of C++, you learned the different statements which are there, the conditional statements, the looping statements which are there. Okay, here we start with object oriented concepts, and the most important object oriented concept is classes and objects. Okay, so to start off, you will be having what is object oriented programming, what are the paradigms in terms of object oriented programming. Then you will have an introduction to classes and objects, and in classes and objects we have different types of elements that can be used. One of them is what we call as function overloading, so that will be one chapter. Then you will have certain things which will be used for initializing, so what we will call as constructors, and for deinitializing what we call as destructors as such. Okay, and then if you have say multiple classes, many classes, there is a possibility of connecting those classes to derive properties as such. So that is what we call as inheritance. And then you have certain advanced methods of writing program using the concepts of pointers. Here we use addresses instead of values, and of course we can use a file for storing our data. So we will have various files which will be used for storing our data. So that is what we call as
There is some technical hiccup. Sir will come back. Yeah, sir. There was some cut. You can go ahead, sir.
I don't know. Yeah, I think the screen is visible now. Okay.
Yeah, now it's visible, sir. Thank you, sir. You can go ahead, sir.
Okay, so now if you look at this unit of programming, you will probably realize that it is a very big unit. Okay, you can just add up the marks. You can see 6 plus 7 is 13, plus 7, 20, 28, okay, 36, okay, then 42, 47. So 47 marks comes from this particular unit. Now, what do you understand by these two things? Okay, so now if you just look at unit A and unit B, and if you just roughly analyze them as such, if you remember, I used one statement in the starting as such. So it is important for you to study hard, of course, that is there, but it is also important for you to study smart. Okay, so that means you will have to have a method of deciding in what order you want to study. Okay, if you are starting from unit A and coming to unit B, if you cover that much itself, and if you study smartly, you can see that if you look at 1 mark questions, 5 1 mark questions is covered in unit A, and 5 1 mark question gets covered in unit B. That means all your 10 1 mark question comes from only unit A and unit B. Okay, so that is one of the method. And if you see probably about 7 2 mark questions come from unit A and unit B. Similarly, about 6 comes from 3 mark questions from unit A and this thing, and probably all the 7 5 mark question comes from unit A and unit B. So if you study smartly and concentrate on these things, you'll probably realize that you can put the entire thing of your studies, the entire 70 marks of your paper from these two units itself as such. So that will make your job easier as such. So the additional chapters that we have will become more like supplement chapters. Okay. In other words, if there is some difficulty in terms of any few questions here as such, you can naturally say depend on the remaining chapters as such. Otherwise, you can see that your entire process of study can be limited to these two units as such. So again, so what are the basic concepts of object oriented programming? So you would have studied the concepts of what is an object, what is class, and what is inheritance. So what is encapsulation, what is polymorphism. So these definitions you will be studying in object oriented concepts as such. So individually, separately, if they are asking you the concepts, it will be asked as 1 mark question. A direct question will be asked, what is inheritance, and so on as such. But if they are asking, explain any two object oriented concepts, explain any 5 object oriented concepts, then it will be asked as a 5 mark question as such. Again, I repeat, the entire thing, no programs will be asked. Full programs will never be asked. Examples will be asked. Anyway, give an example of a class, give an example of function overloading can be asked. But complete programs related to your this thing is not going to be asked as such. So there is so one 1 mark question and 1 5 mark question coming from the introduction part of that object oriented concept session. The chapter 5 that you have in your syllabus is basically a revision of what you had studied in the first year. For that reason, no marks is allotted for that. It's just a revision, just to prepare for you. After the first year, you would have had some break as such, and it is possible that you would have forgotten what you had studied in the first year as such. So just to overcome that case, so you will be having this chapter. It has no marks as such, so don't waste your time on the 5th chapter. It is not required for you to study that as such. 6th chapter is the introductory part, 1 mark question, 1 5 mark question, which will basically help you. And these are basically concepts. So I told you concepts of classes, concepts of objects, concepts of inheritance, what is polymorphism, what is encapsulation, what is message passing. So these things are there as such. So if you just study those concepts, that will be enough. Now, implementation of that comes from the next chapter. The actual implementation comes from the remaining chapters. So how to create a class, how to create an object. So that you will be learning here. So here that again you can see that. So you have examples here. So you will be probably having direct say questions of how to create a class, how to create an object. With examples, if they are asking, it will be asked for 5 marks as such. So 2 1 mark questions can come from here, and 1 5 mark question can come from here. Again, implementation of this, you can again so this, what is function overloading, what are the types that are there, so can be handled here as such. You know that function overloading is basically say substitution of what we call as polymorphism. Polymorphism means what? Many forms. So if something can exist in many forms, for example, if you have the plus operator. Now in our life, where do we use the plus operator? So plus operator is normally used to add only 2 numbers. Everywhere you would have used plus operator to add 2 numbers. But if you are using plus operator for, say, for example, adding 2 words, or combining 2 words, that means we are using the plus operator for many purposes, multiple purposes. So then we call that as polymorphism. So polymorphism can exist in different forms. So one of the forms is what we call as operator overloading. Just now I told you plus can exist in different forms. We call that plus is an operator. So operator, which is used in different forms, constitutes what we call as operator overloading. Similarly, we have functions. You would have written a function for factorial. You would have written a function for reversing a number. So when you write functions, if you have 2 functions having the same name, but for different arguments, then we call that as function overloading. So what is function overloading? What is the Syntax of a function overloading okay, function is okay, what might be asked for 2 marks. And one example okay, if you're writing with the explanation, so then it will constitute 5 marks. Okay. And to make jobs easier, okay, all of you would have okay, completed your practicals, and you probably would have had okay, programs related to all these concepts as such. So what you have to do is okay, learn those examples only. Okay, don't go to okay, other okay, examples as such. You concentrate only on those which you have already studied. That will again save the complexity of studying as such. It will make your job much easier as such. Okay. So then you have constructors and destructors. Okay. So constructors are used for initializing. Okay. So normally when we have values, we initialize, we store okay, certain values in the starting itself. Okay. So those starting values, how to store with the help of functions okay, for objects is what we call as constructors as such. So what is a constructor? Okay, what is a destructor? A direct question. You can see two direct questions only are possible here. What is a constructor and what is a destructor? One of them will be asked for a 1 mark question. Okay. And again, okay, if they are asked what is a constructor, explain with an example, that will constitute this. A bigger example case, so will be as such case. So if you want to write with the help of a small program or some this thing, then you can write here as okay. Similarly, when you have inheritance, okay, inheritance, like I said, is a concept where okay, so you pass okay, say certain features from one class to another class. Okay. For example, now if you look at your say grandfather, okay, imagine your grandfather is a class. Okay, so that means your grandfather is defined in terms of certain characteristics inside that class. So he looks like this. Okay, he has a certain height. Okay, he has a certain weight. Okay, so his structure is of a certain type, face is of a certain type as such. Okay, now if I take you as one class, okay, so you are also having a certain structure, certain height, okay, certain okay, weights, okay, all features are there as such. Now, when we observe, we see that some class, say, features from your grandfather class is matching with you. Okay, somebody will come and tell in your house, oh, you look exactly like your grandfather. Or somebody might say, you look exactly like your father. Okay, so that means some features have passed from one class to another class. Okay, from the grandfather to the son, from the grandfather to the grandson. Okay, so like this, some features are passed as such. So that is what we call as inheritance. Inheritance is not just inheriting money as such, inheriting features. So how to do that with examples? So one 3 mark question and one 5 mark question. We have different types of inheritance. Understand that. Okay, if there is okay, a direct passing of features, so we call that as simple inheritance or single inheritance. Okay, if the feature is passed from okay, multiple levels, from grandfather it goes to the son, and from the son it goes to the grandson. So multiple levels it is passed in. We call it as multi-level inheritance. From two people, if you're getting features, okay, for example, for some parts you look like your grandfather, for some features you look like your grandmother. Okay, maybe you have got the face cut from your grandfather, but your behavior is like your grandmother. So that means okay, you have multiple inheritance from multiple people, you have got the features. Okay, so for each of the inheritance, what it means and okay, how it is implemented is okay, what you will be doing with respect to 3 marks and 5. So 5 marks specifically, they will ask you any one type of inheritance as such. Okay. And pointers and data handling, you will have to learn the concepts only. You don't have to learn any okay, big examples as such. So what do you mean by a pointer? How to create a pointer? Pointer, remember, is something where we store an address instead of a value. Normally in a program, when we have variables, we store values. So instead of values, if you're storing addresses, we call it as pointers. So what is a pointer is one standard question that can be asked. Okay. So how to represent a pointer, how to create a pointer can be 1 mark. So like this, you might have simple direct questions which are asked as 1 mark questions. Okay. Or you might be okay, asked with an example for 2 marks. Okay. Or if you okay, are able to give okay, say a certain small part of okay, a program, how to create a pointer and how to use it in a program. So a little more like that will be okay, a 3 mark question as such. Okay. Similarly, how to create a data file or what are the different types of data files. Okay. So we have, remember, when we have data from a program, we can store it in a file. We can store the data directly, what we call as a text file, or we can convert the data into some other type and store it, what we call as binary files. Okay, so that means from a program, alphabets can go to a file, or zeros and ones can go to a file. So how to create that, how to use it with examples is what you will be learning with, okay, say 2 marks and 3 marks as such. Okay, so the detailed, okay, the division of your syllabus is given in the next slides as such. Okay, so here you can see that to start off, you have the programming paradigms as such. So that means what is a procedural language, what is object-oriented programming. So that will be there as such. So then, okay, again, you can see that you have the basic concepts that are there. So you have concepts of classes, you have objects, what is data abstraction, what is encapsulation, inheritance, polymorphism, okay? And of course, what are the advantages of object-oriented programming? That comes in the first basic concepts as such. The second chapter is in terms of classes and object. Okay. Now every class has multiple divisions, and in that divisions, okay, so you will have, okay, what we call as, okay, different specifiers. So we have private, we have public and protected. So what do you mean by private? Okay, what data should be put in private? What should be put in public? What should be put in protected? Okay, you have to understand these things. You don't have to, okay, learn programs related to that. You have to understand, okay, those things as well. Now, what can you put in the, okay, say, private part of a data? What are the, okay, they are called as the members of a class, or what we call as data members. So how to create data members, how to create member functions. Okay, so these things you will be learning as such, and then how to declare a class. Okay, when we declare a class, we are creating an object. Okay, how to create a simple object, how to create an array of objects, and how to create functions which can return objects. Okay, so these are the things that you will be learning. Of course, again, you can be selective in terms of your learning. Okay, you don't have to concentrate so much related to arrays within a class, okay, an array of objects or functions returning objects as such. So that, okay, for the knowledge purpose, you can always study that as such. But in terms of your, okay, examination point of view, you can be little selective in terms of studying the basic concepts that are there, up to how to create an object, okay, and how to use an object as such. Okay, so then you will be having function overloading. Okay, what is function overloading, why it is required, how to declare function overloading, how to restrict and use function overloading. And there are two types of functions which are there, what we call as inline functions and friend functions. Okay, so there will be one question that might be asked related to inline functions. So what do you mean by an inline function? Can be a direct question. Second, what is the difference between an inline function and a macro? Okay. It might be asked, it might not be asked. Okay. I will tell you very roughly as such. Now, when you divide your program into different parts, okay, instead of writing one single program, if you write your program into in small parts, each small part is what we call as a function. Now, whenever we use a function, what happens? It is like, okay, you will be going from your main program to the function, executing that function and coming back. Okay, that is how you will be executing as such. Okay, so that means whenever a function is called, you're moving from your program to the function. But it is also possible that you can bring the function to the program. So when you bring your function, okay, instead of going to the function and executing it, if you bring that function to your program and execute it, we call that as inline functions. Okay, and similarly, there are some functions which are called as friend functions. Okay, remember, for example, you have a friend. Okay, now what is the feature of this friend? That friend does not stay in your house; he stays somewhere else. Okay, but when he comes to your house, what does he do? He goes everywhere in your house. He does not stay in one place. He's not like a, okay, visitor to your house. If a visitor comes, what happens? He will always sit only in the hall as such. Okay, and he will not move around. But your friend is not like that. He will move from this end to that end. If he sees anything, he will take it and eat it without asking. Okay, so that type of function, okay, which can be used by anybody and everybody, is what we call as a friend function. Okay. And of course, I told you what is a constructor. Constructor is used for initialization. Okay, so we can initialize values. whenever we create a class, there will be some data in the class. How to store values in that class? Storing values in that class can be done with the help of a small function. We call that as constructors. Okay, and we have different types of constructors. We have default constructors, we have parameterized constructor, and we have copy constructor. Okay, so default constructor, what it will do, by itself it will store value. Okay, if you create a data, for example, you create a data x, by itself it will put 0 into that. Okay, parameterized means you are putting the value. Okay, you are sending the value and storing the value as such. But if you are copying the value from one variable to another variable, or from one object to another object, we call that as copy. Okay, so like this, there are different methods of storing values automatically, okay, or with values, or with parameters, or by copying from somebody else. So these are the three types of constructors that we have. Like we use constructors for storing values, we also use destructors for deleting the values. Once my job is over, okay, for example, I take a plate to eat my food. And once I have completed eating, what do? I clean my plate and keep it aside. Okay. So cleaning of values, okay, is done with the help of a destructor. Okay. Why we have to do that? Okay. When we use values, we are using memory. Okay. Once my program job is over, I have to go to the next program. Before I go to the next program, what I should do? I have to release that memory. I have to leave that memory. That is done with the help of destructor as such. Okay, so that is the job of destructor. Okay, then you have inheritance. Okay, so that is, I told you, extending classes. So you have multiple classes. So how to pass values from one class to another class? The first class from where the value is passed is called as a base class, and the class to which the value is passed is called as a derived class. So from the base class, features are passed, values are passed from the base class to derived class. Okay, like I said, the base class might be your grandfather class, and the derived class might be your grandson class. So from the grandfather class to the derived class, values are passed. Okay, how to do that? Okay, and like I said, different types of inheritance: single inheritance, multi-level, multiple, hierarchical, okay, as such. And what is the connection between those types? That is what you'll be learning here. Okay, and even though your pointers, okay, and data files, you can see a lot of information is here as such, but they are all connected to each other as such. Okay, what is a pointer? How to declare a pointer? How to initialize a pointer? And how to store addresses in pointer? Okay, and how to create a pointer and remove a pointer. So this much, if you study, that entire pointer concept gets over. And realistically speaking, even though 7 hours is there, you'll probably realize that it is not that much as such. So probably 1 or 1.5 hour series of studies will be more than enough for pointers. Similarly here also, here you can see that lot of functions are there. You have a get function, you have a get line function, you have a put function. Okay, now you can study any 5 of these functions. Don't study all the functions. Okay, so again, as a 5-mark question, remember you have one 5-mark question from file handling. Okay, so as a 5-mark question, they will ask you to explain the working of any 5 functions. So if you're wasting your time studying all of them, again, it is good for knowledge. I don't say that you should not study for knowledge. So you should study for knowledge. You should have them. But any 5 of them, get line, put line, open, close, that much you study, your job will be over. Okay, so that is what you will be having for data file handling as well. This takes care of the second unit of your syllabus. If you have again any doubts before we go to the next unit, you can ask. Any doubt?
Sir, we'll go to the next unit, sir.
Yeah, okay. So, and that will be good as well. Okay. The next unit, as you can see, is related to additional chapters that are there. So now these additional chapters are general concepts that are there. You will have concepts related to data. Okay, so what is data? What is information? And what is database? Okay, and what are the commands that we can use as such? One of the language that we use for database is what we call a structured query language. Okay, so that is the language on which we can create this database. We can put values to the database and perform operations on the database. Okay, so not much will be asked here as such. Again, in terms of questions, you can see that from the concepts, basic concepts that are data related to database, you can have two 1 mark questions that will be asked, one 2 mark question that will be asked, okay, and two major questions that will be there. Okay, essay type questions will be asked as such. Okay, and SQL commands, okay, it is more of implementation of the commands. That is why simple questions will not be asked. It will be more related to the higher this thing as such. But it is naturally, you can see that additional. Now, if you look at your unit A and B, you have already covered 80 marks as such. Okay. Now you might be asking the question, my paper is for 70 marks. Okay. And okay, already 80 marks is coming there. And this remaining additional 27 marks is here. So does that mean that my paper is exceeding 70 marks? Yes, your paper is exceeding 70 marks because there are a lot of choices. Okay, lots of choices are there. Okay, and that is why, okay, you have to be very careful or very smart in terms of how you study. Okay, so that you can, okay, manipulate these choices according to your convenience as such. Okay, so I will once I finish this database concepts and the next one, I'll come to the overall this thing. So there we'll have an understanding of, okay, how you can have your choices and how you can distribute them as such. Okay, what do you study in database concepts? Okay, naturally, what is data, what is information? Okay, what is a database? Okay, and what is the difference between a database, data type, and so on as such? Now, when you have a database, what is a database? A database, if I say I have database of students of a college, so what does that mean? It means that I have a large amount of data of all the students of that college. Okay, so that means a large collection of organized data is what we call as a database asset. Okay, now related to those databases, there are a lot of definitions. We have definition of entity, we have definition of attributes, and we have definition of relationship. Okay, if one data is connected to exactly one more data, we call that as one-to-one relationship. If one data is connected to many data, we call that as one-to-many relationship. Okay. For example, you take say you and a house. Okay. Naturally, you are connected to one house. Okay. One student, one house. Okay. So that means you go exactly to that house. So one-to-one as such. But if you look at say you and your parents. Okay. One student has say two parents. Father is there, mother is there. Okay, or many to one. Okay, so you can have two parents having one child. Okay, or two parents having many children. So like this, we have different types of possible relationships which are there. Okay, I have given a different type of example as such. So if you take an actual database, you can probably have different types as such. Then you have how to organize this data. So we have sequential organization, we have random organization, we have index sequential organization. Okay, sequential, you all know, if I'm organizing the data in the alphabetical order. Okay, so your names in your class is arranged in the alphabetical order. Okay, then we call it a sequential. If they're not arranged in alphabetical order, if they're arranged in the order of admission, then it becomes random. As the student comes, we add it into the database. Okay, but if we have a random data, but if I maintain a separate register number of the students, now how is the register number of your class organized? It is in order. The names of the student may not be in order, but the register number is in order. Okay, that is what we call as indexed. So there is a register number which will connect to your database. So that is what we call as indexed asset. Okay. So then, we have this concept of abstraction, which is exactly similar to what you have learned in programming assets. Okay. So abstraction means what? For example, you have a switch in your house. You on the switch. Suddenly one light will on. Now you will never bother to find out why when I press this switch, the light comes. Okay, so that means the internal working of the switch and the light is not of interest to us. We are not bothered about the working of that. We only know that if I press this switch, this light will on. Okay, so that is called as abstraction. So abstraction means hiding. Okay, the working is hidden. How to use it is available. So for data also like that. If I want to perform some operation, internally how that operation is done is hidden. But if I give this command, I will get this output. Okay, that is what we call as abstraction. Now, the representation of data is done within a particular order. We call that as a scheme. Okay, or in technical terms, we call it as a schema. Scheme means what? Okay, scheme is an arrangement. Okay, scheme is a plan. So the way we arrange the data, the way we connect the data is what we call as a schema asset. Okay, and that schema is indicated in terms of different models, what we call as data models. Older data models we had was hierarchical data model and network data model. These are very old models which are not used nowadays. They are obsolete. The presently used model is what we call as the relational data model. Okay. Okay. EF Cord was the person who introduced this relational data model. Okay. So that you'll not be learning as such. Okay. And then to access the data, we use what we call as keys. That means in a large database, we don't have to know every data asset. For example, in your say student database, is it necessary for me to know the register number, name, class, combination, okay, all other data? No, it is not required. If I know only the register number of the student, automatically I will get all the other data. So that data which can give me all the other information is what we call as key data. So we have different types of keys. We have primary keys, secondary keys, candidate keys, and foreign keys. Okay. So definition of these things should be known, okay, to you as well. And okay, how to perform different operations on a database. Some simple operations are selection, protection, okay, union, Cartesian product. So these operations, okay, is represented in terms of a certain set of laws as such. Those laws are defined in what we call as relational algebra. You don't have to confuse this with algebra. It is not algebra. Okay, performing operations on databases using certain rules, certain laws, okay, is what we call as relational algebra. And okay, there are certain definite operations like selecting data, okay, select protecting data, combining two data, okay, or multiplying two data. Okay, that is what we call as different operations of relational algebra. Okay, and okay, higher concepts when you have very large amount of data, how to store it, how to use it is represented in terms of what we call as data warehousing and data mining assets. And like I said, the operations on database can be done in the help of a language. That language is called as a structured query language or SQL. And there are different methods of doing this. One with what we call as a data definition language. The other one with what we call as data manipulation language. Okay. So data definition, we have three commands. One is the create command, drop command, and alter command. Okay. Data manipulation, we have five commands: update, insert, delete, select. Okay. All these commands come under data manipulation. Okay. Select has various versions: select with distinct, select with from, select with where, select with group, select with order, select with join. Okay. So these are different tests. Plus, like you have library functions for various operations, we have some library functions to find some average, count, and max. So that will be your structured query language. And the last unit that you have, okay, again, is additional communication concepts in terms of networking and in terms of internet as such and in terms of web designing. So these are general concepts that are there. So that is why not much marks is there. You can see that you have 9 marks here, 6 marks from the second one and 6 marks as such. Okay, so that will be 15, 6, 21 marks as such. So this will be good for a student who has problem with say programming. Somebody is having problem with programming, you can study more of unit C and unit D, so which are more theoretical by nature. And theoretical by nature, if you have studied, it becomes easy for you because you don't have to remember programming concepts or you don't have to remember programming examples as such. Okay, again here you can see you have 1 mark questions 3, okay, and you have 2 mark questions and 3. Okay, each unit has each chapter has 3 mark questions and only one from networking concept. Networking is a slightly larger chapter as such. Okay, so more hours are allotted for that. That is why 5 mark questions is related to this chapter. You can see 10 hours is allotted to networking. and all are general concepts that you learn. What is networking? Okay, so what do you mean by ARPANET? Okay, so ARPANET is a concept which basically was started in the starting, and it gave the rules and regulations for how to create a network. Okay, then we had the OSI model, then we have the other model that we have. So all these models which are there, and so a lot of definitions are there. What do you mean by HTTP? What do you mean by HTTP, as you know, hypertext transfer protocol or file transfer protocol, or slip, or different protocols. What do you mean by internet? What do you mean by a network? What are the different ways of types of network? LAN, WAN, MAN. What are the different types of wiring that is used? Twisted pair, whether or coaxial or optical or microwave or radio wave or satellite or infrared or laser, and how to organize your computers in a network, whether it is in terms of a bus topology or star topology, ring topology, tree topology, mesh topology, graph topology. Like this, how you can organize them. What are the additional devices that you can use? Like what is a modem? And the connector that you use. So when you are connecting one computer to another computer, you have a wire. At the end of the wire, you have a switch, or a small plug access. That is what is called as a connector. Different types of connectors are there. One type of connector is what we call as RJ45 connector. Okay. And then different types of cables and different devices. Like what if you want to connect one internet to multiple devices, we will use a switch or a router. If you're having lesser number of devices to connect, you will use a router. If you have more number of devices to connect, you will use a switch. Then if you want to say connect over a long distance, you will use a repeater. If you want to connect two different types of networks, you will use a bridge. And if you want to connect two different types of networks, then you will use a gateway as well. And of course, today you have wireless computing. All of you use mobiles for your networking access. So in mobiles, we have different types of technologies. We have GSM, we have CDMA. So common used technology is the GSM technology. CDMA is limited to certain countries only. It is not popular in India. It is not used as such. So GPRS. So wireless local network is there. 2G, 3G, 4G. All these are definitions that you will have to study. And of course, for a network, so it's very important. You should know what is virus, how it might affect, and how you have to take care of that. So these are the things that you will be learning as such. Now, in terms of softwares, you will be learning how to connect to the internet as such, and what is www, what is telnet, what is URL, what is domain, what is server. All are definitions that you will be studying. And a small usage of HTML. Again, you would have already done your practicals, and one question on your practicals would have compulsorily come from HTML. So that much what you have studied is more than enough in terms of your examination assessment. Now, trying to understand the overall distribution, you can see that this is the overall distribution. Now look at this, what is happening here. Your paper is for 70 marks. But you are given a total of 135 marks additional option. So you can see that. All you have to do is what? You have to get 70 out of 135 marks. So a huge amount of choices are there. And in terms of say 1 mark also, you can see you have to answer 10 out of the 15 1-mark questions that are asked. And where does the 10 come from? If you just go through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. First 11 chapters, till pointers you have studied, all your 10 1-mark questions are available there. Similarly, 3 plus 2, 5 plus see 5 2-mark questions you have to answer. So 3 plus 2, 5 up to chapter 9. Your 5 2-mark questions are coming. Again 3 plus 2, up to 11th chapter, your 5 marks question. 3-mark questions are coming. And if you want to study this thing, 7 5-mark questions are the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So by the 8th chapter itself, you would have completed your essay type passage. Now, what I would suggest is For those few who are good in programming, it is good you study more seriously. I'm not asking you not to study anything. You have to study everything that is important, but concentrate more on unit 1 and unit 2 as such. That will get you your entire 70 marks more as such. Okay, you can give a little less effort on the other units, unit 3 and unit 4. Those of you who find programming slightly difficult, I would suggest you just study unit 1, unit 3 and 4. Okay, so that will take care of your preparation as well. Okay. Now I will just show you a sample paper also that is there. Okay. So you can see that you have 15 1-mark questions which are direct. Okay. It will not have any indirect questions. It is just direct, simple questions that will be asked. Okay, like what is a microprocessor? What is the other name of Boolean algebra? Okay, so define truth value variable. Okay, so what is the logic gate? Okay? Simple questions as such. Okay, similarly, 2-mark questions are also simple and direct as such. Okay, so 10 2-mark questions will be asked, out of which you have to answer 5 of them. Okay, and 3-mark questions again 10 is asked, and you have to answer 5 of them. Okay, again it is with explain. You can see that the question has now come into 2 parts. What is cache memory? Explain its type. If they had asked what is cache memory alone, it would have been from part B. Okay, if they are asking explain its type, then it will be you explain types. You know that level 1 cache and level 2 cache memory. Yes. Okay. If you go to say 7-mark questions, like I told you, you can see 1 Karnoff map question will be compulsory. Okay, so here you can see algorithms will be asked. Nowhere programs are asked. You can just go through everywhere. Algorithms are asked. Stack also push and pop algorithm you have to give. Okay, so everywhere else explain the characteristics of a friend function with example. Okay, constructor with example, inheritance with example. Everywhere examples are important as such. So this will be your representation as such. Okay. Now some general things for you to explain. Okay, I have another 5 minutes. Okay, some general things. Okay, so now do not assume that your paper will be easy. This is one very important thing as such. That is why planning and starting your revision early is very important. Okay, so this is very important as such. Okay, always have a proper timetable. Organize your study of time. Okay, and the rule says that. Okay, remember there is a lot of scientific study which has been done, which tells when we should study, when we should not study. And what is found is studying between say 5 o'clock in the evening and say 9 o'clock in the evening has less results. That means the more effective time of studies is in the morning and not in the evening. Okay, the attention span of a student is more in the morning and not in the evening. Okay, so but it is up to you. I'm just giving you a general scientific study that has been done as such. So it is very important. And don't study in such a way that you forget to eat, you forget to drink water or milk or anything as such. So you have to make sure that you hydrate yourself properly, you eat healthy food, and you sleep the required amount of time. Normally they say that 8 hours of sleep is a requirement for somebody of your age as such. But it does not mean that you have to sleep continuously for 8 hours. Okay, you can always break your sleep as such. So you can have a sleep of 4 or 5 hours in the night, and then if you have studied for some time, you can always have a half an hour break or a 1 hour break. Okay, sleep some again and start as such. Okay, and don't have a standard unique or single technique for revision. It will always be better you have multiple techniques, and it will always be better that you study at different locations. Okay, sometimes what happens, studying at a single place continuously will make it boring, and after sometimes you would see that you have lost your concentration as such. Okay, and taking say in between breaks is important. What is again told is the span of a student is very less nowadays. Okay, so previously it was about 10 minutes, now it is about 8 minutes they say. So you cannot study continuously for a long duration of time. Okay, and you cannot study continuously for hours together, because after probably about half an hour, 1 hour, you are only studying, you are not remembering or assimilating it. Okay, so it will be always better if you have studied for 1 hour. Okay, take a break of 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Okay, go somewhere, have a cup of water. Okay, just smile at somebody, come back. Okay, don't fight with somebody, smile at somebody and come back. Know your exam is very important. Okay, that is why I took up the previous this thing of knowing your paper. Okay, I didn't want to take up a sample paper and just solve it for you as such. That I can do it at a more leisure time for you as such. Okay, and of course you should have knowledge of your timetable, what exam is on what date. And have all the data required regarding that. Okay, all have your material with you ready. All have the say timetable ready with you. Anything else that is ready with you. Okay, and you make sure that you have knowledge related to that. Okay, this is what I wanted to share with you on this discussion as such. So I just want to wish you a very good luck for your exams as such. What I have for you is I have shared with Narendra sir a set of solved questions. Called the 1 mark, 2 mark, and 3 mark questions. Questions and answers are there. So that will again additionally help you go through that. And at any time you want my help related to these things. So at any time you want me to support you in terms, or you have a doubt, you is available for you. So we will help you in terms of those things so that you can achieve as much as possible as such. So with this I would like to thank Chanakya University for giving me this opportunity to speak as such. So all the best for your future. Thank you, sir.